Good morning, Save Laurel Ridge supporters and non-supporters. Have a bit of a chest cold. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, but as they say, the show must go on. So here we are. You will notice that this video is posted to YouTube. The idea being if we get enough likes, subscribes, and shares that we can monetize this channel, and any proceeds from the monetization of this channel will then go and be donated to the Save Laurel Ridge Legal Defense Fund. So like and share, and maybe we can pay some of these fees with nothing more than doing what you already were going to be doing, which is watching these videos. So today I have a response to the editorial that was in Sunday, I believe it was Sunday's Tribune Democrat. I called that editorial irrelevant the other day, and it's not that the person that wrote it has an irrelevant point. It's just that they go in a roundabout way and kind of involve the windmill debate to make their point when that really has nothing to do with that point. So let's get into it. So as we read through this editorial and work through it, I want you to pay attention to the rhetoric and how they phrase what their supposed point is. All right, so the first portion says, a proposal to build a windmill farm along Laurel Ridge has evoked an emotional response from area residents and sportsmen's groups, the angst whipped into a frenzy by a political showman. We neither oppose nor support at this time the Greater Johnstown Water Authority's plan to install windmills on its property in Upper Yard Township. All right, stop right there. Who is we? The online version listed no author. So this could be just about anyone. This could be a kindergarten class. This could be CPV themselves. This could be just about anyone. They are admittedly in the undecided portion of the population where they don't really care if there are windmills on Laurel Ridge or not. So that leads to, well, what is your point? Why are you writing this? Spoiler alert, they're writing it because they have a problem with Representative Burns. And it'll become more clear as we go through it. So more information on the project, how the project might impact the environment must be developed and shared within the community. Well, that seems like a good idea to do before you sign a lease. The Water Authority did outline its dilemma during a meeting Thursday. The organization will be forced by the state of the Department of Environmental Protection to make pricey improvements to 2 local dams in the coming years. The cost could be passed on to customers or another revenue stream could be found. The authority sees a collaboration with Competitive Power Ventures as a viable example of new revenue, $210,000 annually, according to estimates. Okay, we've already established that there will be pricey improvements that had to be made. We have already established that this is all about money and that the Water Authority sees this $210,000 as a way to offset some of their expenses, even though we still have no idea and the numbers don't add up as to where they're coming up with $210,000 from 8 windmills. But pay attention to the rhetoric because it's very important. So it almost goes into a writing of political fiction. Fiction part of it being you have a protagonist, an antagonist, and the evil villain. So on the side of Save Laurel Ridge, we're emotional and we have angst that's whipped into a frenzy versus the Water Authority who has a dilemma and they're going to be forced in the pricey improvements. And then you have the villain, which is the evil political showman, Frank Burns, just putting on fronts and to get votes. All right. So the rhetoric as they go through this it's amazing. All right, so moving on, CPV would install 8 turbines on the authority's land. We've already established that. Opposition to the proposal has been voiced by nearby residents as well as representatives of the St. Clair Tremont Trap and Field Club, Board of Supervisors, Group Save Allegheny, Save Our Laurel Ridges. We've already established all this stuff. Okay, so at this point, this is just filler to make the editorial a lot longer and make it seem like we're making some sort of a profound point, when really they're not. So two major issues have been raised in these early days: potential environmental impacts. A Cambria County judge approved a lease agreement between CPV and the Water Authority, noting that there is no evidence that the watershed would be at risk. Now, there's a very important distinction that we have to make here. What was done is that the judge made a ruling because there was no evidence presented to him at the time of the hearing. That does not mean there is no evidence that the watershed could be at risk. That is a huge distinction that needs to be made. It's not that there's no evidence, it's that there was no evidence presented to him at the time. Okay? The other important distinction is that this is not a tentative lease. This is a lease. This is signed. There is control of this land given to CPV. They can go up there and do their studies and do their wind testing, and it is a lease. It is not a tentative lease. It is a lease. If the project goes forward, it would still be 2 years before windmill is standing atop Laurel Ridge, as CPV would need to complete a series of feasibility studies. Okay, yeah, maybe it's 2 years before the actual turbine is standing on top of Laurel Ridge, but what about the events leading up to that? Are we just going to sit idly by in the next 2 years and hope that it doesn't show that it's a feasible project for CPV? Permitting does not happen in 2 years. It doesn't happen the day before the thing goes up. Okay? So, yeah, you're right. It's 2 years before you're staring at one out your backyard, which means you only have 2 years to stop it. All right? A perceived lack of communication within the public about the project. The Water Authority did advertise the concept in the classified section of the Tribune Democrat, but opponents were angered. Again, the rhetoric, angered, we're angered, that a tentative lease deal was reached before public hearings were held. Yeah, we are angered that a tentative lease, not a tentative lease, a lease was signed before public hearings were held. If I'm on the board, if I'm on Greater Johnstown Water Authority board, I have to, with any bit of foresight, realize that any wind turbine project that goes up on a ridge meets resistance from the citizens that live in the area. That being said, I would have to stand up in front of the board and say, listen, we need to get public opinion on this because, maybe they would be fine with a rate raise rather than going this route. It's their land. Let's put it on the news. Let's put it in the paper. Let's put it on Facebook. Let's put it on our webpage. Let's shout this from the mountaintops and get as much information as we can from the people that we are supposed to be protecting their watershed. So it goes on, if the project, nope, I missed that. Don Hall, chairman of the Water Authority Board, said, okay, this next, we're going to skip over some of this stuff just for time's sake. A lot of it is repetitive. We know there's $20 million worth of additional debt. Again, we covered that, maybe not a number, but it was covered earlier in the article. The only direct quote from the Save Laurel Ridge supporters then comes in. Mr. Cushing suggests that water customers would be willing to pay 83 cents per month to help the authority handle those future bills without installing the windmills. Perhaps polling customers would be a good step. Well, yeah, polling customers would have been a good step, because if you would have done a poll like the Tribune Democrat is doing right now, with over 1,100 people chiming in their opinions, which is more than a representative sample of the 21,000 customers, and we're 83% against the turbine project. The Water Authority has to realize they made a mistake here in acting on behalf of their customers, the citizens, the owners of that land. Even with adjustments made for polling, you're still not going to lose 30% of the opinion that these things are a bad idea. This should have been done before the lease was signed. This is what we're saying. There's no foresight here. These dams are 30, 40, 50 years old. We didn't know that they were going to have to be fixed. There's no foresight whatsoever. Authority manager Michael Kerr said his organization did explore another funding source. This is where we actually get into the point. We're in the bottom half of the article, and we're finally getting to this person's point. He said the group reached out to State Representative Frank Burns for help. The Democrat from East Taylor Township did not respond. Okay, so you own land that's in Upper Yoder Township and Somerset County, Conemaugh Township. You reached out to one state representative. You know who else is a state representative that represents this area? Mr. Barbin. You know who Mr. Barbin's brother is? The solicitor for the Greater Johnstown Water Authority. So you reached out, allegedly, to one representative in the area. If I need to come up with $20 million, I'm reaching out to everybody. I would have had phone calls to Governor Wolf. You know, how am I supposed to pay for this? You guys are mandating this stuff. You need to help me. I left messages with him. Kerr said he made the accusation we're not doing our job, that there's grant money everywhere to be had. If there's grant money to be everywhere to be had, he's the representative of the state and of the area here. No, he is one of the representatives. Burns will play an important role in the resolution of this debate, but only if he stops, once again, here comes the evil villain, fanning the flames of dissent, and serves as a neutral moderator and funding facilitator. His questions about easing of deed restrictions with possible environmental risk is legitimate. So you tell him that he's legitimate. You tell him that his voice is legitimate. You only reach out to one representative in the area, but he's fanning the flames of dissent. Okay. A leader is not in charge. A leader is responsible for taking care of the people in his charge. According to the poll, 83% of the people, which is an overwhelming majority, are against the turbines, and Mr. Burns is taking care of the people in his charge by being involved with this. You want a neutral moderator between who? Between Save Laurel Ridge and the Greater Johnstown Water Authority? There's no point. The Water Authority signed the lease. So now you would be moderating, you would have a state representative moderating between citizens and a corporation that is not from here. You mean to tell me that that doesn't open him up to questions? No, he needs to represent his constituents, the overwhelming majority of his constituents, and that is exactly what he is doing here. At his own public meeting days before the authorities' gathering, Burns claimed the windmills would negatively impact the region's tourism industry, undermining the efforts that every elected official in this county has been working on for years. That's true. That's absolutely true. We've had hiking trails and biking trails, and we have a whitewater park, and we have the Laurel Highlands hiking trail. 94,000 people visit Laurel Ridge State Park every year. Mr. Burns is doing the right thing here. His grandstanding continue. Again, evil villain, he's grandstanding. Well, grandstanding is saying false things just to get votes and just to get applause. No, he's saying things that are true, and he's representing the overwhelming majority of his constituents. He's doing what he is supposed to do. Too often politicians act on emotion rather than facts. Okay, what facts? What facts are we not getting right here? You make no mention of facts that we're not getting right. The only thing you say is that we have 2 years to stop these. That's not a fact. Mr. Burns is acting on facts. The facts are that his constituents don't want this. The facts are that a lease was signed without public input. The facts are that there are studies out there that show potential impacts to the watershed, to tourism, to the surrounding community. Those are facts. He is using facts. He might be speaking about them emotionally because he's from the area. He has a stake in the game, and so do his constituents. We're troubled that he has played the part of a politician, telling the authority that the members of the public don't want this without responding to GJWA's pleas for help. Now we finally get to the point. We are troubled. We still have no idea who we is. All we know is that they are troubled of him playing the part of a politician. He is a politician, and he is playing the part of a politician the way it needs to be played. He listens to his constituents. He responds on their behalf. That is what politicians do. And that is exactly what he is doing. Perhaps Burns could also intervene and negotiate with DEP on the future dam repairs. At this point, it doesn't matter. Even if Mr. Burns came up to the Water Authority and said, I found you $200,000 a year, that alone does not stop the wind turbines on the ridge. That has to be made very clear. At this point, it is out of the Water Authority's hands. 100%. Opponents to the windmills project have raised valid concerns. The Water Authority clearly expressed its realities. So we have concerns, they have realities. Again, the political fiction. We have concerns, they have realities. We are emotional with angst, and then we have the Water Authority that has realities and dilemmas, and they're being forced to do things, and they're in this situation by no fault of their own, and how could the evil villain Mr. Burns attack them like that? That is the point of this. And if you don't believe me, look at the white space. Oh, almost half of the white space is an attack on Mr. Burns. The other half is direct quotes from newspapers and editorials. It's already stuff that has been addressed. It's already issues that we have sympathized with the Water Authority for. So if there's any question as to what this editorial is, it has nothing to do with wind turbines. It has to do with a presumable group of people that have no opinion one way or the other if the wind turbines go up, and saw this as a chance to attack Mr. Burns. That's all that this is, and that is why I say it is irrelevant to our cause.